Bulldog Tours offers you licensed tour guides who gives you exclusive access to Charleston's most alluring places. Today, I talk one-on-one with the owner of Bulldog Tours, John LaVerne, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. John LaVerne, welcome to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
I appreciate the opportunity and always good to see you, Quintin. Thank you.
Likewise. Obviously, you are the owner of Bulldog Tours, which has been voted Charleston's #1 food, goals, history tours. And obviously, Bulldog Tours licensed tour guides offers exclusive access to the city's most alluring places. Let me ask you, John, what's new, what's now on Bulldog Tours?
Sure. That's a great question, Quintin. We love what we do here. We love showcasing Charleston to guests from all over the world, and always looking at how we can improve the experience, how we can make Charleston better. As far as what's new, we're excited about 2022. A few things on our radar. We're going to hit the $5 million mark as far as our preservation goals. So we started this little over 20 years ago with the concept of making Charleston better. And the first partnership that I did was with the old Exchange building, and just a handshake agreement that I was going to start this company, and we would give, the time it was a third of all the ticket proceeds to the old Exchange, and they could use that money for preservation. And since then, we partnered with a variety of local historical landmarks, including American College of Building Arts. They owned the jail at the time, and then Circular Church. They have the oldest graveyard in Charleston, Patriots Point. We've done some tours in Berkeley County. We've done some tours at the Powder Magazine. Anyway, this whole model of sustainable tourism, that's kind of at the core of all things Bulldog Tours. And we're going to hit the $5 million mark this year, which is exciting. And we're obviously going to continue this goal of making Charleston better and helping preserve these local historical landmarks, including Magnolia Cemetery, which is one of our newest partnerships that I'm super excited about. So that's on our radar for 2022. We've got the International African American Museum opening up later this year. We're super excited about that, and working on some things. We've been doing a variety of African American history tours, whether it's focused on Low Country Gullah culture, or looking at some Gullah food tours, looking at some civil rights tours, that kind of thing. But we're excited about the museum opening up. This is the time of year where it's slow, so we focus on training our guides, making sure that they're ready for the busy season. So in addition to what the City of Charleston Tourism Department offers through their continuing education programs, we have our own internal continuing ed programs as well that our guides are required to go through. And it's kind of our commitment to not only making Bulldog Tours a great experience, but also the Palmetto Guild, which is a wonderful effort in Charleston to make sure that the tour guides are certified, the tour guides are knowledgeable, that they're great citizens, that they are, respectable towards, local residents, that kind of thing, just in effort to make Charleston a better place to live, better place to visit. So we're going to continue our continuing ed efforts here with our guides. Let's see what else. One of our favorite new partners is the Lens Foundation, which I'm on the board of, and that's an incredible nonprofit organization that's dedicated to improving the relations between the community and Charleston Police Department. And Chief Reynolds is on the board, and then it was the whole concept kind of created by the mayor and Chief Reynolds, and then George Reith. He lives out on Isle of Palms. He was one of the original benefactors to this, and he is the chair of the board and just an incredible man. And we've got lots of really wonderful initiatives involved with the Lens Foundation that we're excited about. And that's a lot, and we're excited for 2022. And then obviously being able to operate and thrive during this whole pandemic environment, making sure that our staff is safe, making sure that our guests are safe. And thankfully what we do is primarily outside, and we can keep our groups small. We can keep our people separated and safely distanced, and that's super important to us, and just trying to get through all this. It's been challenging, but thankfully Charleston's open for business and our tourism industry is doing well. So I feel very blessed.
Yes, indeed. And I want to talk to you about sustainability tourism and the International African American Museum later in the interview. But how have Bulldog Tours made Charleston better with your experience?
Sure. So our initiatives with the preservation aspect of, and the way it all worked was the old exchange really wasn't being utilized at night. So my idea was, okay, let us give tours through this building at night when nobody's here, and then, large portion of the proceeds will go back to y'all, and you can use it for preservation, for maintenance, operations, what have you. But the money that we've raised for these, some of them I wouldn't call them neglected, but these landmarks, they're expensive to preserve, they're expensive to maintain, operate, all of that. So the money that we've raised for that has certainly made Charleston better. Let's see, then we're, I think, very charitable organization. We donate to pretty much every school auction, church auction out there, and kind of in-kind donations. We are really proactive with that, and then supporting various charities, whether it's Ronald McDonald House, MUSC Children's Hospital, anything really involving kids. That's where our true passion is, children and education. We do lots of school groups, not necessarily in the pandemic, but it's a big part of what we do. And there's not a lot of money to be made there, but it's always, I think, important to get children excited about history. So that's one thing that we try to help younger kids get excited about their local history. So lots of field trips, that kind of thing. And then offering first-class experience to our guests, making sure that they leave Charleston very happy, and make sure they keep our taxes low by spending lots of money. So that's a few of our efforts that we do to make Charleston better.
What is exciting about local history?
What's exciting about local history? I'm not a super academic historian by any means, but certainly in my schooling through the years, taken all the history classes out there, and for some reason, the history of Charleston resonates a lot more with me. I think it's because we live in this incredible historical venue, and the history's truly alive. Like these buildings that we read about in the history books, you can visit them. A lot of them, you can go inside of them. It's right there in front of you. It's not just something in a book, the pyramids of Egypt, that kind of thing. Like, no, this is the old exchange building where the Constitution was ratified for South Carolina. This is where George Washington visited. This is where, signers of the Declaration of Independence lived. We just live in this amazing historical venue that I never take for granted, and there's not a day goes by that I'm not appreciative of that, and there's not a day goes by that I don't notice something else. And I've walked these streets 1,000 times, millions of times it seems, and I always notice something different, like, wow, that's incredible, that's beautiful, that's, never realized that, this house had these architectural elements or whatever it might be. But I just think Charleston's the most amazing stage for giving historical tours. I can't imagine doing this anyplace else.
And when you go around Charleston and you see these different things that you haven't seen before, which one of those experiences from what you have seen matches the Bulldog Tours experience?
Sure, and it goes hand in hand that this is our backyard. This is what we show the locals. So we're very blessed to have an incredible group of tour guides that are incredibly passionate about it. So we talk about Charleston nonstop around here. We're open from 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. almost 365 days a year, and we just eat, sleep, breathe Charleston, and we're constantly telling, like, hey, the conversations that I hear around here amongst the tour guides, it's all about Charleston. And like, hey, next time you've got a group and you're walking by here, notice such and such. And it just grows from there. But again, just an amazing place to do what we do.
And I should ask this later on in the interview, but what will the conversation be about Charleston in the next 5-10 years from a history perspective?
Right. I think Charleston's becoming more and more, I don't know if comfortable is the right word. We're getting better at telling the entire story of Charleston, which is very important. I've been saying it for 20 years that our job is not to disseminate what we should or shouldn't tell. Like, our job is to tell the entire truth of the city, whether it's uncomfortable, whether it's ugly, it's bad, whatever it is. And especially the subject of enslaved Africans. That's a subject that we have to hit head on. We can't, flinch when somebody asks us a question. We have to be very prepared for it and give people the truth, because not all of Charleston's history is pretty and comfortable and all that. And we want to make sure that our guests realize that while, yes, this is probably the most preserved, most beautiful, charming city in America, there was certainly a side of our history that wasn't so pretty. And we certainly talk about that. So I think, as the museum is going to help the dialogue change through the years. And what I think our community will find is that people from all over the world are fascinated with this aspect of our history. And I know we've had plenty of European visitors that come over here, and it's one of their most intriguing subjects that they're always quick to ask about. So I think the amount of visitors that come to Charleston for the museum, it's going to be very surprising to some people, and we're excited about it. We think it's a dialogue that has to happen, and we are ready for it.
What is that dialogue right now, John?
Right. So, thinking in my career of being a tour guide, perhaps 20 years ago, a lot of it wasn't even on my radar. Like, okay, if we are, down on the Battery, how significant is it that these houses, a lot of them were built by enslaved Africans? Perhaps that wasn't even mentioned on one of the tours 20, 30 years ago when I became a guide. But now it's I'm extremely aware that, okay, there's a lot, the levels of Charleston's history, it's more than just the top layer of like, look how pretty and well restored and happy and safe Charleston is. It's a lot deeper than that, and it's important that we tell the story. So yeah, we're getting better and better at it. We're far from perfect, but certainly a work in progress.
What truths need to be exposed right now?
What truths need to be exposed? I don't think there's any like hidden secrets or anything like that. I think as a community, we're getting better at just meeting our history head on and being very honest and open about it. And I think it's going to make Charleston a better place. I think we're going to all be very aware that there's a lot of layers to our history, and that we all need to be very aware of it.
What story was told before the full story was told about Charleston's history?
Right. So I've heard, people allude to like, oh, it was just kind of whitewashed and all that. And perhaps it was before my time. I've been a tour guide since 1991. And thankfully, Charleston at the time had required all the tour guides to pass tests. And certainly a big part of all the tour guide testing was the African American history piece of it. And a lot of it's eye-opening because there's plenty of things that I've learned as a tour guide through the years that honestly weren't taught in the history books. And a lot of it's kind of my initiative to get smarter in that whole area of our history. And a big turning point for me personally was, I guess it's probably 12, 13 years ago when there's a lady, Giada De Laurenta. She's a celebrity chef on the Food Network, and she came to Charleston to meet with, I think it was Sean Brock, and talk about food at McCrady's. And just so happened that she booked a tour at the Old City Jail, and I was asking her food questions, and she's asking me ghost questions, and she's like, John, you seem a lot more passionate about food than you are ghost. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's certainly the case, but she's like, you ought to do food tours. And I didn't even know that was a thing. And she said that there were a handful, 2 or 3 food tours at the time. So I started looking into it and quickly realized that if there's any food in our country that has an amazing story behind it, it's low country cuisine. And very quickly came to the realization that it was the enslaved Africans that really gave us what we eat all the time here, whether it's shrimp and grits, whether it's sheep crab soup, what have you. And they truly get the credit for creating this amazing food that we eat. You know, they took the influences and the menus and the ingredients from the European settlers. They took the Native American foods and menus and cuisines and passion about food, and French Huguenots and British and all that, and then their own love of food and their own ingredients, and they blended it all together, you know, and came up with this low country cuisine that we all love. And made me realize, like, wow, the significance of the enslaved Africans on what we eat is phenomenal. And then again, it's just like this onion, just layer after layer after layer, that's showing us, you know, the importance of this whole culture that, you know, perhaps 30, 40, 50 years ago wasn't really discussed. But again, that was kind of before my time. I think Charleston, this has been a work in progress through the years, and Helen Hill at the CVB has been instrumental in helping us create that dialogue. And yeah, I think it's going to make Charleston a better place, a more unique place, and it's only going to improve what we do here.
What should be the dialogue about the food culture here in Charleston?
Say that again, Quintin?
What should be the dialogue about the food culture here in Charleston?
Sure. So first thing that comes to mind is this whole notion of farm to table. Charleston's been doing that since 1670. You know, it's a relatively new concept in many places, but you know, we're blessed to have these long, hot summers in Charleston. We can grow stuff 10 months out of the year here. And many places around the world, you just can't do that. But you go to the farmer's market at Marion Square and you see these amazing vegetables and you see chefs over there too, buying these ingredients that, you know, it's amazing to me to think that you go to one of these restaurants and that the food on your plate, whether it's, you know, seafood, like there's a good chance that that fish was actually in the waters yesterday. And there's a good chance that those vegetables were in the ground, you know, within the last 2 or 3 days. And the Charleston restaurants have really elevated the experience through the years. And I think it's amazing that some of them are so committed to having these fresh ingredients. They have their own farms around here. They're growing their own tomatoes, their own corn, their own everything. And that's amazing. And it's no surprise to me that Charleston's become this incredible foodie destination. It's one of the main reasons why people even come here. I think history is the number one reason, food's number two. So as far as Bulldog Tours, that serves us really well because that's what we do. We talk about history and we talk about food. So
how do you elevate that Bulldog Tours experience right now?
Yeah, so it's another work in progress. We're constantly training our guides. We take all the reviews very serious. We have, it's not a computer program, but it's a very complex algorithm, basically, of spreadsheets to follow every single tour guide's online reviews. Make sure that all the guides are giving, you know, amazing tours. If any of them start getting bad reviews, then we quickly pull them off the schedule. And I can't remember the last time that's happened, but we make sure that all our guides are offering great experiences. We make sure that we partner with great restaurants that really understand our passion about telling the story of low country cuisine. We make sure that the foods that are offered to our guests on the food tours, that they fit well into the narrative of what we're talking about. And yeah, so it's just constant focus on making sure that the quality is there. It's this constant focus on making our guides better and better at what they do. And we have probably 75 tour guides that work here. And, you know, these aren't full-time guides. Some of them are seasonal, part-time, variety of college students, retired people, semi-retired, a little bit of everybody. And just making sure that they are constantly fed a continuous stream of information. And, you know, like, hey, we're going to do a workshop on how to answer tricky questions. We're going to do a workshop on how to make sure that anybody with mobility issues has a great experience on our tours. So we try to look at every single aspect of the user experience and make sure that we're doing our job and trying to hit a home run with that.
I hate to be biased, John, but you know who's my number one tour guide at Bulldog Tours? Franny.
Franny?
I love Franny.
She's awesome. It's funny, Franny was the very first employee that I hired over 20 years ago. I started this thinking it was just going to be me, that I'd be giving tours at night. I had a full-time job in the daytime, but Franny was employee number one, and she still gives tours here, and she's wonderful. And I love her passion for the city. I don't know if you follow her on social media, but her pictures are amazing, and she's just a neat person and definitely a huge asset to Bulldog.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. From 1991 to right now, John, being officially a tour guide, what is the biggest difference about Charleston's history?
So in the grand scheme of things, not a lot's changed in 30 years, figuring that, we really talk about history from 1670 to present day. The Charleston that we see now, the Charleston that we love now, certainly has changed in the last 30 years. I think it's better. I think that we offer the guest a better experience. It's grown. I think the city's become more and more committed to preservation through the years, which is always a good thing. But there's challenges that come with that too. All the building of hotels and office space and everything that goes with population growth, that's been a challenge, not only to our industry, but to others. Charleston has become more popular through the years. We've won all these accolades of best city, best destination in the U.S., that kind of thing. So Charleston's on the radar of more and more people these days, and on a global level. I go to tourism, travel, convention shows, whatever, several times through the years, and the amount of people from all over the world that have Charleston on their radar or have visited here in the past, it's mind-boggling to me, because I can remember, when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, whatever, I was like, yeah, I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. People are like, where's that? Is that near Charlotte? Is that near Atlanta? Whatever. But now everybody knows about Charleston, so we're doing something right.
On a global level, how do you tell Charleston's narrative?
On a global level, it's no different than I would tell a group of locals. Like, we're here to tell the truth. We're going to tell the entire story, and this is who we are. We're authentic. We're not going to hide anything. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So whether that person's from Mount Pleasant or they're from Spain or Great Britain or Asia or South, it doesn't matter where they're from. It's going to be the same stories.
What has been hidden from the story about Charleston?
What's been hidden? We touched base on this earlier that, my experience is 30 years of being a guide. And I think through that 30 years that Charleston's become better and better at telling the entire story. There's certainly aspects of Charleston's history that I don't think that was any of our in our history books. We didn't talk about the stories of the rice crop in Charleston. It was a very short narrative, and it's a much deeper, much more involved, complicated story than just one paragraph. And again, that's kind of the birth or the catalyst for my love of our food tours here. Rice was a big part of it. And, we was some very wealthy people that made a lot of money based on the efforts, the workforce of enslaved Africans. But it's the rice crop that made Charleston the wealthiest city in colonial America, and thus these amazing houses and buildings and churches and all that. But, I can't think of anything specifically that was hidden. I just think that we're getting better and better at telling the story.
What are those short narratives that you've been hearing lately about Charleston's history?
Short narratives about Charleston's history. It's just kind of a work in progress. We're improving what we do. I think Charleston's always had a high bar of expertise when it comes to the tour guide community. I'm sure there's guides out there that perhaps tell stories that would be tricky to prove in a history book, but the people that are come to Charleston, they're educated, they are well traveled, and they expect a great tour, which I think we absolutely deliver on that.
Absolutely. Speaking of rice, John, who do you want to partner with next to share your passion of telling Charleston's cuisine?
Who do I want to partner with next? That's a great question, and my gosh, there's a gazillion opportunities out there. There's nobody top of mind, honestly. Magnolia Cemetery, that's always been on my radar since day one. I truly think it's the most beautiful place in the entire city. So once we made that partnership happen, just a huge sigh of relief. I'm very proud of it, and that's truly going to be my legacy, is helping Magnolia Cemetery be around for a long time. As far as our next partnership, I don't know. We partner with Fort Sumter Tours. We get to tell, we're involved with them. We sell a package tour, whereas people can do the Fort Sumter tour and then do our history tour. So you see Charleston by boat and by land, and that's been a great partnership. Yorktown, Patriots Point, has been an amazing partnership over there. An incredible story to be told over there, and it's, while not specific to Charleston necessarily, even though we had a Navy base, which was a big part of our history here, but just the bravery, the patriotism, everything that's involved with the history of our Navy and the Yorktown, and they've been an amazing organization to work with over there. So we're happy to be involved with them. I don't know. There's always a zillion ideas. I love everything about the American College of Building Arts, and I think it's one of the best kept secrets in Charleston that we have this phenomenal accredited 4-year college where you can learn how to create, whether it's iron gates, blacksmithing, you can get a degree in that. You can get a degree in timber framing or plaster, masonry, these things. And not only are they making new products, new houses, new, whether it's gates or architectural elements, but they're also helping preserve these historical landmarks all over the world. When Notre Dame burned a few years ago, whoever's in charge of that project, they called the school and said, we will take every single one of your students, every single one of your alumni. We need all the help we can get. And that's the level of expertise that they are creating over there. And it's truly the number one institution of its kind in this country, on this continent. I've been on the board for a long time. I realize I'm a big cheerleader, but I think that school is an incredible value to our community, because some of these buildings, churches, houses, they're 200-300 years old, and when you need your plaster ceiling repaired, you don't just get on Craigslist or the Yellow Pages and find ABC contracting company. You need true trained artisans to make that happen. And for us, having that, the American College of Building Arts in our own backyard, that's a huge blessing to us.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I'll partner with them. I think all the time that a preservation tour would be great, and we've done plenty of them through the years. There's all these kind of niche subjects around, whether it's preservation or the history of churches, history of graveyards, what have you, that we'd love to do. Whether they ever scale up to be offered on a regular basis, who knows? But preservation is something that we certainly love talking about and are proud of. And so, I don't know. As far as the next partnership, we'll see. We're always looking at opportunities. So,
How is Charleston's story told best, by the water or by land?
That's a great question. I think the answer is both. I kind of have this standard answer when somebody's like, I'm coming to Charleston, what should we do? I'm like, well, first thing you need to do is take some type of tour, whether it's a walking tour, carriage tour, bus tour, but that will certainly give you a lay of the land and an introduction to what Charleston's about. The other things that are important to see is Charleston by the water, and Fort Sumter Tours. They do an amazing job. And whether you're even a fan of Civil War history, it's an incredible experience to go into Charleston's harbor, to be on the fort and look down on the peninsula, and just the level of history that you can talk about and see and feel out there at the fort. That's important. And then also the plantations. Not only are they beautiful, but the history behind them, it's something that everybody needs to be aware of. Tell people eat some great food while you're in town. And, not that anybody's going to go to Taco Bell or Subway while they're here on vacation, but, we have these amazing locally owned restaurants with this incredible offering of, their menus are just over the top. So I'm like, eat some great food while you're here. So as far as which is better, by water, by foot, land, whatever, like they're both important. And there's just so much to see in Charleston too. We talk to travel operators from all over the world and like, well, we're sending our guests, they're going to spend one night in Charleston. I'm always like, time out. Like, I get it. You're looking at a map of Charleston and our downtown area. It looks small on a map, but there's so much to see and do here. Minimum 2 nights. 3's better. 4 is ideal. And just keep working on that to persuade everybody. Like, yes, while Charleston's relatively small in size, there's a lot to see here, and just try to make sure that all of our guests see as much as they can while they're here.
Absolutely. And I know this might be a hard question here, John, but what's your restaurant here in Charleston actually tells the narrative of Charleston's food cuisine the best?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think any of them that use local ingredients, that are truly committed to, sustainable fishing, sustainable farming practices, those are the restaurants that do an amazing job. And then get down to, like, there's restaurants that make their own polenta, that make their own stone ground grits, that kind of thing. Any restaurant that elevates the expertise to that, like, yeah, I think they all should be applauded. But, kind of the staples, Magnolia's, Anson's, High Cotton, Hall's Chop House, all of those amazing restaurants, Fig, they're truly committed to the local farmers, the local fishermen, and the quality of the food shows, because that's a big reason why people come here from all over the world, because, yeah, food's awesome.
Yes, indeed. And speaking of love, you said this on your website, not just because we want you to love it too, but because we believe that when we get to know and love a place, we're exponentially more likely to nurture it, keep it healthy, unique, interesting, and vibrant. How did you get to know and love Charleston?
So my love affair with Charleston started 53 years ago. I was born here. I was lucky enough, my dad was an Air Force pilot, and we moved away when I was 4, but I spent most summers here with cousins, and just fascinated with the city. And what's kind of been interesting is my journey in my love of Charleston it's changed. When I was a kid, I was fascinated with the city market because it was this kind of dirty, rundown, seedy environment, and like, wow, that's crazy that there's, people sleeping on the sidewalks, and that, people get pickpocketed, and I was just super intrigued with that. And then in college, I was intrigued with just the level of fun here, and, College of Charleston. I went to the Citadel, but spent a lot of time at College of Charleston, and, an incredible institution that place is. And then became a tour guide and fascinated with architecture. And then as I got older, like, fascinated with the gardens. Now I'm fascinated with the food, with the African-American history, with everything about it, and making sure that our visitors get to experience as much of that as possible. So to answer your question, it changes. I can't say daily, but again, I notice different things every single day, and I'm like, wow, we live in this incredible venue, for lack of better words. And I'm just, I love everything about Charleston, and I love seeing it through the eyes of my kids too. That's always a unique experience, and my kids love this place as much as I do. And it's just neat to, we play tours all the time. Weekends or vacations, summer breaks, whatever. I'm taking them to Fort Sumter. I'm taking them to plantations. We're going to, B City. We're walking downtown and visiting the different shops. And I'm nuts about this place, and I've had opportunities to take Bulldog Tours to other destinations, but I'm like, there's no way I could ever love another place like I love Charleston. Like, it would be impossible. We could absolutely give tours in Savannah or Colonial Williamsburg, Chicago. It doesn't matter. Like, our ability, our knowledge of how to give a great tour, that's universal. But our love for Charleston, that would be impossible to replicate.
Wow, that's just amazing. And is the African American history being told enough in Charleston?
Is it being told enough in Charleston? That's a tough question. Again, we're getting better at it, but part of me, like, I don't know what I don't know. We're doing everything we can to incorporate that into every tour that we give. What other people are telling, I know the plantations, they're both feet in. They are committed to telling the right story. I think we're getting there, honestly. How to quantify when we reach, the desired level, that's beyond my bandwidth, honestly. But again, it's a work in progress, and I think Charleston's getting better and better at it.
And speaking of which, you said this on the website too, quote, "We designed a sustainable tour model that invests a portion of all ticket sale proceeds back into the properties we tour, ensuring that Charleston's most historically significant and often complex landmarks, structures, sites, and stories are preserved for future generations to see, hear, consider, and explore." What property describes Bulldog Tours the best?
What property?
Yes, sir.
We're kind of a diverse tour company. We don't focus just on ghosts. We don't focus just on food or history. We're Charleston experts is what we are. And I think all of the different landmarks that we partner with, they're all important to really understand the story of Charleston. And these partnerships are only going to grow through the years. It's impossible for us to partner with everybody out there because there's a gazillion historical landmarks around here, but we will continue to work with as many as we can and to make Charleston better and help these places stick around for several more centuries. But there's no one property that we would most commonly associate with. The Old Exchange, that I feel like that's kind of my first kid, because that was our original tour, and to think the significance of that building, that, built by the British, and it's where the Constitution was ratified. It's where George Washington was entertained. It was kind of Charleston's headquarters for centuries, and that's certainly a big piece of my heart and a big piece of what Bulldog is. So love that partnership there. But they're all super important to us.
Absolutely. Which one of our current landmarks need to be preserved and maintained?
It's a great one. Magnolia Cemetery, I think. In cemeteries, they're complicated. You get into the legal piece of it where, it's heirs, it's family, it's somebody owns that plot of land basically, while the cemetery, in theory, they maintain the area around it. But and some of the monuments, they're hundreds of years old, and while we're blessed that we don't have freezing rain on a regular basis, I guess, perhaps this weekend we will, but just the elements, these monuments are outdoors and they take a lot of impact from the weather through the years. But Magnolia Cemetery certainly needs plenty of love, but my gosh, I think the residential neighborhoods around here, like especially south of Calhoun, King Street, those have been well taken care of, and I think gentrification through the years will just continue to spread, and Charleston, the homes will be more and more preserved. And I know the Preservation Society, they do a list of the top, I don't know if it's 10 most needed landmarks as far as preservation. I haven't seen that list lately. I should be very aware of it, but it's a work in progress. And these houses, these buildings, churches that are centuries years old, like they might be preserved, restored, whatever, and the years they go by quickly. So they need constant maintenance, constant love, and it's a never-ending cycle of, okay, how do we continue this quest, this commitment to making sure Charleston's preserved? But yeah, I mean, we see it when you ride around town. There's certainly houses and buildings that need plenty of love, and I think eventually they will all get there.
Yes, indeed. And on a personal note, I just, I personally love St. Michael's Church. I go in there almost every week to talk to God and Jesus. So that's my favorite landmark in Charleston. What is yours?
Oh my gosh, that's depends on what day you ask me. St. Michael's, certainly, like, I live on Johns Island, so coming down the street, and you see St. Michael's, and just Broad Street's incredible. Like, aesthetically, it's one of the most beautiful streets in the world. My gosh, the old Exchange, the jail, man, like, I love so many of them. My God, it's like asking, what's your favorite kid? I don't know. Talking about like landmarks that need help, the Progressive Club out on Johns Island, the Jenkins family, and their efforts in the civil rights, and that's a landmark that needs some love. And Abe Jenkins just passed away recently, and truly an incredible man. But I love the story of the family and their commitment to, my gosh, bringing kids out on Johns Island and busing them into Charleston so that they could get an education, and teaching them, constitutional law so that they could vote, so that they could make Charleston better. And that story to me is always amazing. And can't imagine experiencing that. It was before my time, but anyway, the Progressive Club out on Johns Island. Yeah, I think that's on the radar. And there's certainly, talking of African American history, there's plenty of places around, whether it's cemeteries, churches, buildings like the Progressive Club, that need plenty of love. And let's just hope that preservationists and, whether it's a private, public partnership, whatever, that these places will be saved. So, yeah, there's plenty of work to be done here. But anyway.
Yeah, and I'm running out of time here, but obviously I want to extend my condolences to the Abe Jenkins family. Had him on Quintin's close-ups twice over the couple of years, and he loved the Quintin's close-ups, so God willing, he's in heaven and doing some great work with the ancestors. But let me ask you this. How will you incorporate gentrification into your narrative to tell Charleston's full story?
Sure. And you cannot talk about, so we have African American History and Heritage Tour, which starts down at Liberty Square, down by the where the museum is, and the tour goes down Calhoun Street, and then it goes north of Calhoun Street through Mezquitboro, Ragsboro, that kind of thing. And it's a great opportunity to talk about gentrification there, because you get on America Street and you can see that it's very different than Trad Street. And gentrification, while aesthetically it might look better, that the houses are cleaned up and, et cetera, but it really just pushes the problem out. It doesn't solve anything. It just pushes the problem out. And I think Charleston is getting better at addressing that with some public housing initiatives, low-income housing initiatives, but we absolutely discuss that on our tours.
Yes, indeed. And I know that obviously, while being a tour guide was initially just a hobby for you, about 60 seconds into giving your first tour, you were hooked apparently and also enthralled with the audience and chance to share your love of Charleston with others. Did you turn this hobby into a business?
Right. So my senior year at the Citadel, I did an internship with Vanessa Turner Maybank. She was the head of tourism and clerk of council for a long period of time, just retired a year ago, I believe. And against my will, she's the one who encouraged me to take the Carriage Tour. And that's when the light bulb moment of, like, I want to do this for the rest of my life. I did Carriage Tours for a couple of years and went out and got a real job. And then, I don't know, 8, 9 years later, I'm like, I really miss giving tours, just miss the whole dynamic of sharing my hometown and the love that I have for this place with others. So just really started as a hobby, and I had no idea that it would turn into what it is now. But the more tours I gave, the more excited I got about it. And I was a bachelor at the time. I had nothing to lose. So I'm like, all right, both feet in. Let's see what we can make happen here. I'd never run a company before and never taken classes on how to do any of this stuff. So just kind of winging it since then. But I feel very blessed. I'm one of those people that do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I get excited about going to work every day. I get excited about what our mission is, what our values are at Bulldog, and people talk about retirement, and I think that's the most bizarre concept ever. Like, I cannot imagine not doing what I do. So, yeah, retirement's not on the radar.
Yes, indeed. Speaking of which, you talked about those carriage tours. How should the city, John, preserve and maintain the carriage tours for years to come?
Right. So, carriage tours, they're a huge part of what we do in Charleston. They are incredibly professional. They're the most regulated aspect of our tourism in many ways. And so my initial experience with the carriage tours, I was as a guest sitting on the carriage, and then I became a tour guide later. But back then tourism was very different. Our seasons were much shorter. So basically from October through February, you were either working part-time, 3 different jobs, or, just try to make ends meet, because tourism really wasn't busy. So the very first winter after I graduated, so this would have been in 91, I was able to work in the barns, just shoveling the stalls and taking care of the animals. And that gave me a true appreciation of the level of professionalism that these carriage companies have. And, you hear, I don't know, rumblings, people that question the safety, the question, the care of the animals and such. And just like, you know what, walk into one of the barns and then come out and, talk to somebody that works there and get a true understanding of how they do what they do. And you'll be very aware that the carriage industry, that these people are true professionals, and that, whatever the dialogue is, whatever people are saying negative about them, that it's unwarranted, that they obviously are uneducated about it, because, no different than, I don't know, a truck driver is absolutely going to maintain their vehicle really well, because that's their bread and butter. Well, not only do the carriage companies love the animals, but it's a huge part of their entire operation. So absolutely, they're going to take care of them. So where Bulldog Tours is located, we're on Anson Street, and we have a carriage company right next door here, and then about 20 feet on the other side of us is another carriage company. So we're right in the heart of where the carriage companies are. And when I get here early in the morning in my office, 6:30, something like that, and I hear the people that the carriage company's opening up, I can hear the horses and the mules like banging the stalls with their feet, because they want to get out of the stall and they want to be put on a carriage and they want to work. And these animals were bred to work, and them pulling a carriage of, whether it's 12 people, 14 people, 2 people, whatever, through the streets, it would be the equivalent of us, pulling like a little wagon around the city. It's nothing to them. And yeah, Charleston gets hot, but you know what? These animals completely used to it. They're incredibly well taken care of. They get lots of water. They get their temperatures taken, and them working in this environment, it's nothing. For centuries in our country and all over the world, these animals were pulling plows in the hills of, Tennessee, North Carolina, wherever. Like, this is nothing. This is a retirement. This is the best gig these animals have ever had, and they're unbelievably well taken care of. And I encourage all of visitors to Charleston, locals, whoever, anybody that questions the level of care that these animals get, absolutely need to go in, talk to somebody that's working in the barn. You can see the veterinarian records. You can see that, here's their diet. This is what they eat. We make they're unbelievably well taken care of. So, yes, my opinion, and I've got no dog in this fight. We don't give any carriage tours here, but I just know through my experience that, yes, they need to be, it's an operation. It's a whole genre of tours in Charleston that needs to continue.
And to get back to gentrification really quick, John, how will Charleston's gentrification be difficult to tell the story of Charleston do Bulldog Tours?
Say that again, Quentin?
Yes, so with Charleston's gentrification as we're seeing right now, how difficult will it be hard for you all to tell Charleston's story?
It's not difficult. Again, our goal is to tell the entire history of Charleston, good, bad, ugly, whatever. So whether we're at Rainbow Row and it's this incredible, pre-revolutionary, well-kept, well-preserved structure, like, yes, this is amazing. It's beautiful and it's colorful and all that. However, just 100 years ago, this was Section 8 housing. These were tenement houses. And talking about gentrification, it fits into the narrative of pretty much you'd be hard pressed to go anywhere in Charleston where the story of gentrification did not apply, unless it's a brand new building in, I don't know, a new part of town. Like, yes, this was a cow pasture and now it's a strip mall. Like, yeah, that's perhaps gentrification, but yeah, you get downtown and gentrification, it's just in the fabric of all things Charleston.
All things Charleston. And speaking of all things Charleston, which landmarks describes you?
Which landmark describes me? Gosh, I don't know. I ate a little bit too much over the holidays, so I'm gonna have to go with one of the restaurants. I don't know. That's a tough one. Gosh, Quentin, where do you get these crazy questions? They're too thought provoking. Citadel. That's certainly a big part of me. I was probably the worst cadet ever, or one of the worst to graduate from there. But I certainly love the school and love what it's added to my life. So I can identify with that place. I don't know. Gosh, I love it all, honestly. Like, I can't think of any one building. You know what? 18 Anson Street. That's as close as I'm going to come because it's the home of Bulldog Tours. Bought this place 6 years ago, and I'm completely nuts about it and love everybody that works here. I love the history of the house. I love what we do. So, yeah, let's go with that.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, John LaVerne, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you for the opportunity, Quentin. Thank y'all for listening, and I hope everybody has a safe, great weekend. Take care.
You too. I'll see you around downtown.
Yes, sir. Take care.